President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was inaugurated as the 6th democratically elected president and 16th head of government of Nigeria on May the 29th. Now, in his inaugural speech, he made certain promises, and that's including the pledge to rule in the interest of Nigerians. He said his administration, quote, shall govern on your behalf, but never rule over you, and that his government will again, quote, consult and dialogue, but never dictate. He added that, quote, we shall reach out to all, but never put down a single person for holding views contrary to our own. We are here to further mend and heal this nation, not tear and injure it, end quote. Welcome to Standpoint. I am Precious Amayu. Now, the 1 month of the president has been generating reactions. He has made certain decisions in certain sectors of the economy. He has also made appointments. And the reactions, for and against some of these decisions. But let's look at some of the decisions the president made. On fuel subsidy removal, on May 29th, during his inauguration, President Tinubu declared that there would no longer be a fuel subsidy regime, as the current 2023 budget did not contain it. Now, in swift reaction to the announcement, filling stations and marketers began hoarding fuel, leading to resurgence of queues at some filling stations, and then a consequent hike in the prices of the product. Now, Nigerians are still grappling with the fuel price hike that has led to an increase in the cost of many goods and services and impacted generally on cost of living. Now, let's go to the CBN governor. We also saw the president suspend the CBN governor, now the former CBN governor, Emefiele. That was less than 2 weeks after assuming office as president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu suspended the Central Bank of Nigerian governor, Godwin Emefiele, from office with immediate effect. The suspension, according to a statement issued and signed by the Director of Information in the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Willie Bassi, said the suspension came into effect as part of an investigation of Emefiele's office and the planned reforms in the financial sector of the economy. Also, we also saw the suspension of the EFCC chairman, that's Bawa. That was 16 days, also, 16 days in office of the president. He ordered the suspension of the chairman of Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Rashid Bawa. A brief statement from the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, announcing the development on June the 14th, said the president suspended Bawa over weighty allegations of abuse of office leveled against him. Other key decisions we've seen is the Naira floating and unification, where the president said the exchange rate would not be determined by market forces. We also saw retirement and appointment of service chiefs, where the president, with immediate effect, retired all service chiefs and the Inspector General of Police, and then appointed new ones, as well as advisors, Comptroller General of Customs, and other, offices that has to do with the military. We also saw, again, appointment of special advisors. We've seen a lot of decisions coming from the president in 1 month. Some people have said, look, the decisions that decisions that were expected. Others have called it bold moves. Others have said, look, it's just too early to call. But let's bring in some who are for the president. I want to believe everyone is for the president, but some who are in the same party with the president, and someone who is not in the same party with the president, to look at some of these issues. We have with us a senator representing one of the constituencies in Ogun State, in the 7th Senate. He was also the chairman and Privatization and Commercialization Committee, Senator Olugbenga Obadara. Good to have you join us.
Thank you, madam.
We also have joining us via Zoom, I believe, APC chieftain Cletus Obon. Hopefully we have him now, but if we don't, I'm sure in the course of the conversation he will join us. And we also have Emeka Eze, a politician. He's of the PDP. Good to have you join us, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Precious. Thank you for having me.
Let me start with you. Some have given the president, kudos. Some have said, look, Nigerians are facing, very difficult times because of some of these decisions. But, others are quite indifferent, saying it's too early to call. But, for you, what's your assessment of the state of the nation in the last 1 month under the president's watch?
Yeah, thank you. As good compatriots, you can see the way the country was drifting before the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into office, May 29th. From May 29th till date, you can see many doubting decisions he has taken. Look at the fuel subsidy we are talking about. Fuel subsidy, where we have the cabals, they are just taking the money. And other surrounding countries, we are feeding them. Look at the nation, in the first 1 month, it was able to save 400 billion. If you're able to save that and distributed that among the 36 states of the Federal Republic, what does that say to anybody? And the right-thinking person knows that to take such a decision, he has taken the bull by the horn. I can tell you, palliatives will come, which is going to cushion all these effects. Now, that's the part. Then look at the issue of the service chiefs. The service chiefs, in any new government, they come with new blood. They come with new tonic. You can see the people that are on now. Nobody will castigate the former service chiefs, no. But he has to start with new orientation. People is so much gave the appointment to key in into his program. And besides that, you can see that the nation is going on well. Look at the EFCC chairman.
You believe that in just 1 month, the nation is now on track?
You can be sure that a lot of people are jubilating outside. A lot of people, I'm telling you the correct assessment of the present
When you
situation.
say lots of people are jubilating, because, you know, we are also in the press and we speak to people. There are also those who are also, you know, reeling from the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. Whilst a lot of people agree that, you know, this fuel subsidy removal was necessary, some disagree in the manner in which it was removed and the impact it now has on the citizenry. So when you say everyone is jubilating and rejoicing and the nation is on track, I'm not sure some people will agree with you.
You see, as a parliamentarian, when an item is not budgeted for, it is criminal to spend money. And he himself, as a parliamentarian, you have heard that 2023 budget, the subsidy was not catered for. Where is the money coming from? How will he spend money that is not budgeted? He has to abide by what is sworn to on May 29. So it means it will be Father Christmas unnecessarily. It's biting hard on the national purse, on our reserves. If it was budgeted for, there was no reason for him to have removed it. But when it's not budgeted, what happens? It must be it was not appropriated. So being a believer in democracy and the rule of law is really following the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, let me take you to the man who is in the opposition. You've listened to the senator. He believes that, you know, in just 1 month, the country is now on track and that the president has made really bold decisions. And I've heard people who, you know, quite frankly, some of them in the opposition who agree with him, but there are also those who think that, no, you know, that's not true. But I just want to get your thoughts on your assessment of how well the president has done in the last 1 month.
Well, Precious, I would agree with the senator in some areas. I would not be fair to myself and I would not be fair to reality if I say I am not, you know, impressed in some areas, especially with how the president has kicked off. But then there are still reservations. It will be just like you said when you started out. It's a bit too hasty for one to assess a 4-year government in 30 days. I told friends of mine, I said I wouldn't make any public presentation or say anything until I see to 100 days. But then I want to quickly point out that I was impressed, you know, with his appointments, especially with the service chiefs and some of those immediate advisors who are with him. I saw a lot of square pegs and square holes. I saw people who are experienced in their fields being allowed to, you know, do justice to what is required. Well, I've never doubted President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's, you know, capacity to lead. My concern before now, the last time I spoke in this TV station, was with the area of him, having the strength to withstand what will come with Nigeria. But he has proven me wrong in some areas. But then I'll go back to subsidy. I don't know if it had to do with the people receiving it wrongly or it was announced wrongly. But the way that announcement came out, anyone who is a leader in Nigeria would know how Nigerians react to issues and how panic can easily spring up. And that on its own has created this impression, and the uncertainty that comes with it is why a lot of people, including the marketers and everyone, are sitting on the edge. Nobody wants to be taken unawares. So the prices have been blown out of proportion. There's this scarcity that people believe, even though there's fuel in filling stations, but then walking into filling station one day buying at 200, and after an announcement is made, you're going there the next day and you're doing the same petrol for 550. That, I think, was a mistake.
And there are rumors now, if not rumors, reports rather, because there was we understand that it was an interview with some members of IPMAN who have said that it's going to increase, especially from July.
Yes.
When some people, those in the private sector, start to.
Well, I wouldn't call it a rumor. They have
reports.
analyzed.
That's why I changed it to reports. That it might move to 600 in the south,
610,
and then in the north 700. And people are saying, look,
that's more.
That's a lot. How do you react to that? Do you see, in the way that the president has addressed the fallout of this removal of fuel subsidy? Are you impressed?
I think the way it was announced is the problem. The way the people have received it is the aftershoot of the wrong way it was presented. Because I've always been an advocate. I've always been in support of the removal of subsidy. I see the entire subsidy thing as criminal. I've always been against it. So it was a bold move. It was a good one. But there should have been a little bit of more, I don't know, how the way it was handled wasn't proper. It would have been handled, I think the minds of people should have been prepared, for something this heavy. Because now,
President Buhari had already mentioned it, something that the people had
apart from just the price of fuel, you said it before, that it has affected other areas of life.
No, I was asking you that even though President Buhari he was not the one that removed it, if we were to be fair. That announcement has been made by the Buhari administration. He just further said, look, because this has not been budgeted for, it is gone. So one would believe that, look, that announcement has been made and Nigerians should have, known that it was going to end. Because even in his campaign, he did say he was going to remove it from day one. I would say to you
that what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said wasn't wrong, but it was not necessary. I didn't see the need to mention that because the people wanted reassurance. A whole lot of things he said, because I remember the 5 key areas he pointed out. That's where I hold on to, because I see a lot of some of those things he's doing. He's taking bold steps, but that wasn't necessary. All he needed to do was to continue to walk on the ground and look at, because he gave a mandate, I think, to the economic team. I think it's the vice president or so leading it. And he has said, look at areas where we can, palliatives, things that would help people cushion this effect. Right. That should have been the first thing. Then much later in the administration, because it's clear, the distinguished senator here has even said it, there's no way it will be accommodated in the spendings of government since it's not even there in the budget. Mm. So it's not news. It shouldn't be news. Because sometimes it's just like our everyday life. If you wake up today and you say, we are not very sure if the third mainland bridge can contain 30 cars at the same time, there's something happening. What do you think would happen on the third mainland bridge? Nobody would. Even if it was a careless utterance, nobody would near the third mainland bridge because it's panic. Panic has been created.
So I hope Nigerians are not taking it seriously.
Oh, no, please. That was on a lighter note.
All right, Senator, he said, look, the way it was said, in fact, it wasn't necessary. And that perhaps we're seeing the ripple effect of how it was announced. I want to get your reaction to that. And I also want to ask you if you think that because some people will say the challenges bedeviling this country, as it were, require a sense of urgency. And now the fuel subsidy removal and the impact of it is now one of them. Do you think that the president has been responding to that fallout with a sense of urgency?
You see, let me tell you, no matter the time the president removes this fuel subsidy, what we are witnessing today is what we are going to witness. And somebody has just started his administration. He has a budget to follow until he prepares his own budget. In the budget, there was no accommodation for subsidy. Where will he get the money from? Will he just dip his hand into the pockets and dole out the money? No, that was not available. Please let us commend him to have taken that bold step.
But he is not saying, so what he said, what Mr. Eze said, is that the pronouncement itself was unnecessary.
That's where I'm going.
Perhaps that's what we saw.
That's where I'm going. That is not necessary. Believe me, if you give him 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, the same reaction you are seeing today is what we are going to see. And good enough, he has done something that's so wonderful. When he set up the economic team, headed by the vice president, he gave them a mandate. The mandate is to look at areas to give palliatives. If he has done that, it means having the interest of the Nigerians in his heart.
But some people don't think that the intervention mechanism is coming urgently enough. They think that the government has continued to drag it when it is urgently needed. Do you think that the government is reacting with that sense of urgency to this intervention and palliatives?
No, they reacted very well. As I said to you, okay, this is the palliative. You continue to start taking palliative. Palliative over what? We will have to take. Look at when we had COVID. Palliative did not come before COVID. It came when COVID happened. Incident must elicit such a response, which he has given.
Would COVID be the right the right example? Considering that no one knew
was coming.
It was coming, but this particular one was planned for, and that perhaps there should have been arrangements made, knowing that this was going to be.
That you cannot blame him on the fault of the former president. You cannot blame him for that. The former president was there when he started spending this money from January to March. To May, sorry. What was not budgeted for? What we have lost is in trillions. If we have lost that, you see, this country, we need urgent decisions to urgent situations. That's what he has really done. So nobody will be able to fault him on that because he has taken the bull by the horn and he has already put in place the people to do it. Within the next, I'm telling you, the next 30 days or 60 days, you will see the palliatives being rolled out because the NEC, they are working frantically.
And I hope that we hope that people can wait for 30 to 60 days. But I want to bring in Mr. Obon, but I know you wanted to react before I bring in Mr.
One area that gives me a lot of concern is actually not just the palliative, not just the removal of subsidy. Subsidy, we're talking of its removal because a lot of money is going into waste. But there's still one monster out there waiting for these monies, to come back and then they grab. And that monster is corruption. And one of the assurances President Tinubu gave was proactive measures that would empower anti-corruption agencies. It's one thing to promise. That's what I'm holding on to the president for. In fact, that's the only reason why I'm believing, in the benefits of removing the subsidy in the first place. Because if we have a process where people are taking this money, and then you go and then you remove subsidy and then there's now money to keep again, they will continue to take. So if we have measures in place where those processes are frustrated, and then you can give assurances to the people that this money that would come back from the removal of subsidy will be put into proper use, and will feel the impact, then palliatives is not even our worry. It's what will happen in the future.
All right, let's bring in the APC chieftain, Mr. Cletus Obon. Good to have you join us, Mr. Obon. We've been speaking and we've been trying to assess the 1 month in office of the president and how we think that the nation is faring, or if the nation is on track under his watch.
Clearly, you can see that both at the local and at the international level, there has been some silent jubilation and satisfaction with the steps taken in 30 days, what almost for 30 years we couldn't attempt to do. Because importing foreign ideological, political, and economic policies have been the bane of this country because of the absence of courage in terms of governmental decisions and policies at the highest level. That has been our bane, not because we didn't have it. Don't forget that oil subsidy started right from 1985 in the time of Babangida. IMF told us that was what to do. Labor protested, students went to the streets, and at the end of the day, by 1987, it went into a full-blown what we used to call the SAP riots and all that. All these are some of the measures that we have been avoiding. In 2015, I remember clearly, I'm a foundation member of APC, so I should know. I was the state chairman of ACN, so I worked in the neck of ACN, which was a major component of this administration of the party that became APC. So I can tell you authoritatively that one of the things we promised was the removal of oil subsidy. Remember also the El Rufai Committee, which also gave us the clear indication that we should remove subsidy. There was the absence of the political will on the part of the leadership. Again, we lingered and pondered. And don't also remember that all political campaign instruments was the removal of oil subsidy. So what we are doing here is to play the ostrich because we were criticized for criticism's sake. When criticism becomes hyperactive and becomes excessive, it becomes cynicism. And that is a crippling attitude of any polity or any country that aspires for greatness. Cynicism. You say that you must criticize to criticize just to be noticed. When it doesn't, you think that you are not being patronized as a Nigerian on account of your political inclinations or lineage. You begin to criticize and condemn. But don't also forget that thereafter, you have no country to go to except this country. So if you must have to criticize, it is for the purpose of improvement, to add value. That's the whole essence
but
of
Mr. Obu, are people just criticizing to criticize? Because, you know, there are people who are actually feeling the brunt of the fuel subsidy removal. And you cannot say that, you know, one should minimize their hunger and their current status. There are reports that look, the number of people who are living under below the poverty line is set to increase because of this removal and the increase, you know, in commodity prices. So shouldn't that also be something we pay attention to in how we handle it going forward, especially now that there are reports that look, the price of fuel is going to increase to at most 700 naira per litre.
I'm surprised that we are not buying fuel for 1,000 naira per litre. I'm very surprised, I can tell you that we are not buying fuel at 1,000 per litre. The reason is because the shock of the announcement, the shock to be absorbed, especially by those you call living below poverty line in our country. The bite will be heavier on them. Of course, they are the most vulnerable. So anybody denying that would be inhuman to say that there is nobody suffering from what is going on. We are all suffering. Nobody, of course, like you always hear the mantra and in that soapbox that even the rich also cry. Any person tell you that is not feeling the pinch of this price, because even as the richest man here, it means the demands on you will increase from those who don't have. So nobody is going to escape the pain of what is happening to us now. Our plea and our understanding should be that our information managers and those relating to the public and those who are feeling the bite must continuously talk and assure the citizens that it can get better and it will get better. And there should be practical steps, such as the president and this government is already doing. What are those practical steps? Immediately, Labour indicated that workers are going to be in pain. And of course, this we are talking about the formal labor. Those who don't, the akara sellers, those who are selling mama on the roadside are not part of that labor they are discussing. But they are parents of those who are in school. They are parents of those who are transporting to school and those who are going to also learn.
All right, a glitch there. When we have better connection with Mr. Obu, we'll let him continue with what he was saying. But, you know, whilst he was speaking to that, he said something, Mr. Eze said something that I wanted to bring to you. He talked about issues around how, again, the funds that we're able to gain, you know, from the fuel subsidy removal, you know, how do we utilize them in a way that is not now, you know, something that we are probing, you know, a few years from now. And then even the palliatives, how we saw what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. how the distribution of palliative went. But let's talk about how the president has started in terms of the perception around fighting corruption. The CBN governor has been suspended. Even the man who is supposed to be fighting corruption on behalf of the nation, the EFCC chairman, has also been suspended because they have cases to answer when it comes to corruption. What's your thought on that?
So let me say this. As I said earlier, just this 1 month, the nation have saved 400 billion. How did it go? He was able to share the money into the federal allocation going to the states and Abuja. So all of them, they've taken it. Their allocation have increased. What they've not gotten in years, they've not started getting it. That's the first, commendable action of the president. Now, you are talking about Emefiele who was suspended and Bauer. Yes, everybody knows what has been happening. Imagine in the central bank where we have 3 exchange rates. So you can see what's happening. Even Bauer, before the government can pick allegation against you, they must have been able to establish it. Who will take out of it is go to the law court. In the present time, what we are reading, what we are hearing is extremely criminal. So how do we go from there? How do we go? This corruption has been there not today. It has been there from the name corruption was created. So we can only try as much as possible to curb it. And the president have done the first thing first. Who is in charge? The man in charge of the corruption. If himself is corrupt, how is he going to battle corruption?
Alleged to be.
Yes, alleged.
They're still just alleged.
Yes, that's what I said, court. Now, if it's as alleged, if himself is corrupt, what's going to happen? And look at the Emefiele. Before, it was only removed, suspended, and because the CBN Act does not give the president the power to completely remove. So you can see that he's working within the principle of the law. So what I know is this corruption, it has just started. It's only 30 days in office. And we know with what we have seen, is giving us hope. Look at his advisors. Look at the people he has chosen so far working. Look at the young lady that's been made as a special advisor energy. Look at all that's happening in trade and investment. Look at what's happening on even on policies, or the monetary policy, Mr. Wale Edun. And many Odele Alake, who can you fault? So you can see that he's putting the round peg in the round hole. And you can see that things have started changing. This is about perception. If you perceive that the government is doing well, you can be sure the nation will do well.
All right, so I want to bring it to you in just a moment, but let me get Mr. Opunto to also speak on that before we get to your own reaction. Mr. Abu, we're talking about the removal of the CBN governor, the suspension of the CBN governor, and then the suspension of Abdul Rashid Bauer, who is the EFCC chairman. But I want to focus more even on Abdul Rashid Bauer, because some people are saying, look, one should be skeptical, so that the removal of the EFCC chairman is not at the whims and caprices of politicians. And so we can have some level of stability at the anti-corruption agency. Let's get your reaction, as to how he was suspended.
Now, let me make this point clearly. This is a very sore point, and I try to avoid this, but I must have to make this, especially because this entire government can be crumbled by EFCC alone. And the reason is that corruption is at the root of everything. If the security apparatus and the security actors and those who man it are seen not to be doing the right thing and are corrupt or tainted with corruption or allegations, indeed, they must live above even allegations. That is what EFCC is about. Therefore, to meet that standard, look at apart from the first chairman, Nuhu Ribadu, who is returning as security advisor. It is that credential he got as a police officer that is making him, and in EFCC especially, that is making him rise to become the National Security Advisor to coordinate security of this country. If he can be that, it means that even within that FCC, which was created as a part of the police force, but which must now be made independent, then SIN should now produce its own core foundation staff, which will man EFCC and bring it to world best practices. And the only way to do so is to avoid engaging in the police directly, but to bring from them. They have an academy where most of those who are there came out, like Bauer. Inexperience, exposure. We have enough experienced officers in that place, even by the very act creating it. And those who are sitting there today, look at their ranking. We have PhD holders in that place. We have people who are over 15 years. When you say the act says you should bring under section 12A, sub 1, and says that it should be within the rank of an assistant commissioner of police. An assistant commissioner of police is an assistant director in the ministry. What they are saying is the minimum. But if you get the EFCC Act, and I'm very sure that I remember that there was an attempt to bring it before the exit of the last administration, to bring a new law to make EFCC an independent body of its own, where you have operatives trained only specifically for financial crimes and meet international best practices. So if that is going to happen, then you must bring people from within EFCC. And there are enough qualified hands there. I can say this because I should know. There are enough good hands within EFCC who grew through the ranks and who have been there for the better part. Out of these 20 years, they've been there for more than 50. More than 15 years. And Bauer, the suspension of Bauer is in line. It is not removable, just like the CBN governor. They have just been suspended because, like you rightly observed, it is not within the ambit of the president to remove anybody within that ambit. The intention of that law or that section of the law is such that it cannot be within the caprices, the capricious whims of any president or any electoral or elective officer or politician, as you put it. But essentially that it should be independent enough to carry out its job. So that somebody who feels that his officers are being indicted cannot just wake up one morning and sack an EFCC.
All right, so I want to put everyone on hold and take a break, and then we'll return. We'll get the response of Mr. Eze to all of this. Let's take a break. Standpoint will return in just a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint, and we're still reviewing how well the nation has fared and the trajectory of the nation in the last 1 month under the watch of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We've been speaking with a senator in the 7th Assembly, and he was the chairman, Privatization and Commercialization Committee, Senator Lugbenga Badara. He joins us in the studio. We also have in the studio with us a PDP chieftain, Emeka Eze, and then also joining us via Zoom is an APC chieftain, Cletus Zobun. Mr. Cletus, we're talking about, just before that break, he was saying that, look, what the president, the action of the president falls within the ambit of the law, and that, that particular law doesn't even allow the president to act, within the, at the whims and caprices of politicians. But some have said, look, it's a situation of where you say innocent of the proven guilty. So why the suspension? Because sometimes, even when we've seen in the case of, senior, public office holders, they never return, even when they are found not guilty. How do you think that this should have been handled?
Well, I think the distinguished senator and Mr. Boone have, said it all as regards that it has to do with gaining the trust of the people. Now, if there are concerns that people have in some quarters, especially when someone says abuse of office, for a judge who should be incorruptible, in quotes, then there are concerns. I don't know the details, but if a government comes into place and wants to gain the trust of the people, the umpire should be unbiased. And if there's any hitch or, tickle somewhere, it is addressed. Now, the senator said something. He said he doesn't have the power for outright removal. And so he has acted within the confines of what the Constitution has given him. And I says, okay, step aside while the proper authorities take a look at it, and then whether he comes back or whether the old way of people going on suspension and never coming back plays out, that's for us to find out. But then he is still innocent until proven guilty. But then it still boils down to some of those things that we are talking about. Why is, for now, this is not just to praise President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but just to encourage, because Mr. Obun used a particular word. He said silent jubilation. It's not exactly silent jubilation, but you see, if there's a map and then someone is following the map, he does the first turn, does the second turn, and everything is in line, I believe the journey is going well. But that doesn't mean I would, sit and relax. I'm watching, okay? Now, we want to believe that the president wants the best for the country, and he has no other choice. I think this would be an opportunity for him to write his name on marble, And this is, if you noticed my arguments today, I haven't come here because Mr. Obun said something earlier where he talked about cynicism and, people wanted to criticize for criticism's sake. I don't do that. If I want to express my concerns or my, my reservations, it has to be based on the issues. And I've said that the administration, has started well. Good appointments have been made. We haven't seen that for ministerial appointments. Certain decisions that are good steps in the right direction has also, been made. What we are saying is that we're watching because politicking and political leadership is all about interest. But the interest of the people at this point in time, because of the way we are bleeding, should always come first. Okay? We're talking about the subsidy, the palliatives. I want to encourage, and it doesn't even end at just palliatives and the suffering of the masses. The outcome of the last election is still pinching on the people. Too many people wouldn't want me to say that, but that's the truth. And people are watching. Some people during the election felt we don't feel like we're part of this country anymore. We don't feel like we are one. And that's a dangerous mentality
because
for
of
people to have.
the rhetoric,
and then,
whether religious or ethnic rhetoric.
Beautiful. Now, if only one person can reassure the people that we're still one, can reassure the people that his government would accommodate everybody, can reassure the people that this government is, he said something in his inaugural speech where he talked about governance that will
govern you and not rule over you.
Good, and that's beautiful. It's one thing to say, it's another to do. That's why we're sitting, our fingers crossed, our legs crossed, and praying that he keeps to his words. Because a lot of us are living in fear. Some people are living in times of uncertainty. But it's looking good, and we just want to encourage him to keep to his words.
Let me take, because you raised a very critical point. I want to get to security in a moment because the vice president made a statement in that regard. But I just want to ask you, Senator, because he makes a very critical point. We're coming on the back of a very divisive election. Whether we want to accept it or not, there were religious rhetorics, there were ethnic rhetorics, and people were divided across party lines. It's either you were for or against, and we didn't see any gray area. No gray area was even allowed. But I want to ask you, in terms of uniting the nation, which has been what the president, even when he was accepting an acceptance speech, referred to it. Do you think he has done, enough, and he has taken the posture of someone who, wants to unite the nation?
Yeah, you can see what's happening. In the first instance, look at what happened on the appointment of the service chiefs. In the last 8 years, it never happened. But you can see almost all the geopolitical, maybe by destiny, God just made it and was able to really do that. You can see southeast, south-south, southwest, northeast, northwest, it's only central that didn't have.
Exactly, and I was going to come into that in terms of appointments.
That's
just one
saying,
major
please.
appointment, and that's the SG.
Yes, that's only one. But in the last administration, everything was concentrated in the northwest, mostly. You can see what he did. The service chief talking about, how many service chiefs do you have? We have 4 plus the IGP. So that's only he could do, and the CDS. Because in the northwest, north central, there was nobody else at that time of that cadre to jump into that position. But you can see, look at the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. He's from North Central, from Benue State. You can see the stability. You can see the way it's really giving everybody the involvement, inclusiveness, appreciating every strata. So in this circumstance, then you go again. Go and see what he did in terms of the present appointment is making the now 10 anyway, the special advisors. You can see the way he distributed them. You can see this is a man that has been a headhunter for years. If it's not that the president cannot bring in the ministers tomorrow, no. He's looking at inclusiveness, he's looking at competencies, he's looking at what to do. I can tell you the president no more than 10, minimum of 10 people in each state of the country. So, but did not rely on that. He's looking at involvement. He's looking at how to do this, so everybody will feel belong.
But let me get his reaction. Mr. Abun, I'll come to you in just a moment. But let me get your reaction to that. Even just before the inauguration of the 10th Assembly, we saw how the North Central said, look, they were not well represented in the leadership of the 10th Assembly. And so far, in terms of major appointments, they've just had one, which is the SGF. And some people will say, look, that's a major appointment, it's the SGF. But do you think that so far, in terms of his posture and in terms of appointments, the president has been has shown that he would abide by the federal character and unite the nation?
Well, being fair to the president, I would say this. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion is something you cannot remove. Without that, you don't have stability.
Thank you.
I just in being fair to him, I think he has done very well with the even spread. But then, it is one thing to say. My distinguished senator said, mentioned competence, because that's why I was waiting for him. If that wasn't mentioned, it's one thing for you to say you have 5 people from the Southeast in government and we don't feel the impact. And in fact, it's even to the detriment of the people. Okay? So while looking at the even spread, you look at competence. And the North Central are not the only ones crying. The Southeast wants more. At the moment, the highest political position the Southeast has at the moment is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. And if you ask them, they will tell you they should have been the Senate President. So I understand the fact that we cannot have...
You also have one of the army chiefs as well.
Yes. We try to draw a line between politics and service chiefs.
Well, anyway.
Because there's no...
Even though some will say, look, it's all representative, whether it's military or not.
But for me,
it's part of it.
As long as you've done well to try to spread it, and then you have made sure that the right kind of people are occupying those positions, some of us are comfortable. But again, we would only begin to get worried when those ones you bring in to do the representing are not doing what is expected of them. I'm eagerly waiting for you to get to the area of security, because that is where...
I will get there in just a moment. Exactly where we are going, and I'm taking this too, because I also want Mr. Obun to comment on this issue of appointment. But, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Obun, the Vice President we understand that Mr. Obun is not there for now, but let me ask you, the Vice President made a statement. I'm trying to, quote him, just the way he said it. He said in the past, he said this while he was paying, visit to or homage to the Sultan of Sokoto, during the Salah festival. And he said in the past 30 days, there have been some semblance of peace. And then he said out of the 4 terrorist leaders, security operatives have adequately handled 3 of them. But, the first part that is, where I really want to focus on, that there has been semblance of peace in the last 30 days. Some will say, look, Mangu in Plateau State has had at least 2 attacks. We saw attacks in Zamfara, in June this month.
Yes.
Last month. So where are we getting that semblance of peace from?
Yeah, you see, if you see the skirmishes going on before in the Northeast, see what is happening or was happening in North Central, even in the Northwest. Zamfara has always been a hotbed. People being killed unnecessarily. The same thing in Plateau State, as the Mangu you mentioned, it's not just happening. But all these things are reducing. Everything will not go down one day. It's been extremely taken care of because people that are experienced are being used. And
I'm sure the former president, Buhari, will also say, look, you can attribute that to the work he has done. What if he can also take that glory and say, look, it's him who did that and not this current president?
We will not blame on President Buhari. Now, you see, security is a very volatile issue. When I was in the Senate, I was a member of the Committee of Defense and Army. We knew all that happened, and we knew this is not just a tea party. It's not. Whatever that's happening dovetailed into what has happened in the past, the way they've been nipping in the birds, now getting here now. But it's reducing. Everything cannot go down the same day. It's a gradual thing. That is why the vice president was able and confident to be able to say that when he was with Sultan. Don't forget that he really faced fire as a governor when he was a governor of Borno State. It was in the heat of time. And he knew that things are already reducing. And the way it's reducing, let us, believe me, give the president kudos. Let us continue believing that everything will come down with time. So when this comes down, then it's going to be everybody is going to be benefit of it. That's what I think about it.
Let me get your reaction before I understand we have Mr. Obun now, but let me get your reaction to what he just said in terms of the semblance of, some level of security in the country in the last 30 days, and if this president can take the credit for that.
Well, it depends on where you're looking at it from. I come from Imo State, precisely also local government, and I can tell you as we speak to you now, the insurgency in my community is at its highest in history. I haven't been able to go home in the last 3 years. I understand the state government is doing something about it, but we as a community, as we speak now, have taken it upon ourselves. The community, the local government, every stakeholder, the traditional institution, the captains of industry, we came together, formed an organization called the Odemos. I'm using it as, because if you look at it, you're in Lagos where there's relative stability, or you're in Abuja where everything, and you are not seeing what's happening in some other parts of the country.
And sometimes it's not even the capital,
exactly,
it's the interior.
Exactly. So the efforts towards certain security issues should be coordinated. As I was saying, in Osu local government, there are deaths on the daily, killings every day. In some parts, in some communities, these insurgents, some groups of armed individuals have taken over communities. And even police or the security personnel are unable to even assess these communities. And it is okay for one to say, well,
for the want of time, because I want to ensure that we have Mr. But I just want to ask you, what should be the approach in dealing with insecurity in the Southeast? Some people have said, look, if the president were to release Nnamdi Kanu, that perhaps that would douse the tension. Do you agree with that?
That would help. But you see, the approach to solving the security problem should be coordinated, led by the federal government. You see, like if you come to the Southeast, some of the problems happening in Imo State started from Anambra, some are tickling from Anambra to Ebonyi. So you see, it's not about the state governor being the chief security officer of the state. It's about insurgency and insecurity in the country. And so many factors are responsible. This unrest, some of them will claim to, be part of a movement for this, or that. So if you look at it in his wisdom, I want to use this opportunity to call on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Releasing Nnamdi Kanu would go a long way in reducing the pressure and the tension in the Southeast. If that can be done, he would have solved the problem to a large extent and then engage the people in these areas, reassure them that this government will accommodate you, that this government has your best interest at heart, that this government is doing everything to fix whatever was bad in the past. It was lack of confidence in the system that led a lot of them, to start revolting against the country. And if the country is good, why would you want to? So the first step should be releasing Nnamdi Kanu, and the next step is engaging these people to know what exactly is your grievance. I'm here for you.
Let me bring in Mr. Obun. Mr. Obun, I want you to react to what Mr. Eze just said in terms of, dealing with the security situation in the Southeast. I also want to ask you if you think that we have made any gains in the last 30 days, when it comes to security under President Tinubu. Mr. Obun, can you hear me? I would really love to get his reaction before we leave. But let me give it through the question to you. Reacting to what he said, some would say, look, let the law take its course. But we've seen leaders from the Southeast, especially governors, paying the former president and this president a visit and calling on this particular president to release Nnamdi Kanu. That would go a long way in addressing the security challenge in the Southeast. What's your thought on that?
Let me say this, as I said to you, security is not an issue you discuss in an open field like this. The president definitely must have been briefed by the service chiefs of what could happen if Nnamdi Kanu is released today. They are competent to do that. The president has all the facts within him to really analyze what will happen if Nnamdi Kanu is released. But don't forget, this case is in court. It's sub judice. It's statutory because the judges are there. It's in court. So the judges are looking at things. You cannot, where they are now, the president cannot say, just release him. No, it's not done.
If the president were to do that, what's the implication and what's the perception?
Very good. The implication is, if anybody happens to do such thing, it means anybody can just tell the judge, shut up. Things do not happen that way in governance. You cannot just say, go and release. If he has been convicted, it is then under the prerogative of mercy that the president have the full weight of law on himself to apply.
I have to put you on hold because apologies, because I want to give him, understand that we're not able to connect with Mr. Obun. So I want to give you the last word. We're expecting the ministerial list to come in anytime soon. I know this is what you would have loved to talk about because you were in the Senate. But, what's your hope, for that? And then the policy priority of the president?
Well, first, I've always said this. There are certain positions I would advise. I think he knows better, but I would just want to advise. I would need to say it here. Certain positions that have always been politicized, and we've always paid the price for it. Positions of probably have to do with the ministries for education, the positions that have to do with areas that, have to do with more delicate and important positions, the justice ministry and the likes of it. But I want to urge this government to pay a lot of attention to human capacity development, human capacity building. Too many people are out there not even understanding what life is about anymore. They live the life just by the day. They need to be brought back. Sanity has to come back. So in putting these ministries and creating these appointments, well, if he does it the way he did with the appointments for SAs, I do not think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has problems with picking the right people to appoint. But I think education, human capacity development, justice, and the finance are areas he needs to pay very critical attention.
So you can't have enough time talking about Nigeria. Nigeria is a special country.
You can say that.
There are always issues to talk about. Thank you so much for talking to us. I wish we could have brought Mr. Cletus Obun in. But just to say thank you to him for also contributing. And then the senator in the 7th Assembly, and he was a chairman, Privatization and Commercialization Committee, Senator Lugbenga Obadara, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
And PDP Chieftain Emeka Eze, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, Precious.
Thank you.
Right, that has been Standpoint today, and we'll await the president's ministerial list. We'll see, how well that goes and the influence of the APC in picking those who become the ministers. Remember, you can watch a repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and also at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thank you for watching. I am Precious, and coming up next is The World Now.